Out of high school, I went into the seminary, the Catholic priest seminary, because one day when I was a sophomore in high school, I looked out the window and a big flash came through and the word was serve. So I went that route, realizing that we are spirit, mind, and body. But during my years at the seminary, I realized that the body had to be taken care of too, and of course the mind and the soul. So I left the seminary and studied macrobiotics in Boston for many years. And then I met Bill Nelson in Boulder, Colorado in 1990. I invited him up to Boulder to lecture to some doctors, and the very next day I went to work for him for the next 3 years. So that was a little brief history of how I got started in this. Since Dr. Nelson spent the 3 years with me every day teaching me how to use the machine, I do use it in a much probably more basic way than a lot of the other practitioners. I focus on 3 major areas of health, and it is to detoxify the client, to rebuild major organs, and to nutritionalize them. And in that process, because of Professor Nelson's homeopathic repertoire, I use the homeopathic remedies he created in Denver to carry on the work of the machine during the session. And the thing that really, I think, is the key is the unconscious mind is showing the practitioner what's really going on in the body. And we talk about the word-brain mind, the conscious mind, only knowing about 1% of reality. But the device appears to bring up some things that even the client is unaware of sometime, and yet they relate to when it comes up. And that really helps me see a deeper, broader, wider look into the client. Well, I think the most important thing about the device is the relationship that the device assists in creating between the practitioner and the client. Because we look at the triad, in old ancient Rome, we see when Rome was at its peak that there was the triad, the triumvirate, you might say. It was the Roman generals, the Roman senators, and Caesar. Well, in our skio practice, what we try to do is create a relationship between the practitioner, the client, and we allow the skio device to assist us in that triumvirate. And between those 3 things, we really have an interface, we have a relationship with the client versus a 12.5-minute typical visit at an allopathic doctor's office. And between the 3 ways of doing that, we really get something done in people's lives. Well, this is a great story too, as God's divine timing always works in our lives beautifully and perfectly. One day I was on the phone consulting with some doctors in Boulder, Colorado. I was assisting them in creating a medicine sales type approach through phone sales. And I talked to Dr. Nelson's old friend, Dr. Dan Clark, in Florida. And I was just itching to get into my healing work. I had not been in the seminary for many years. I had not been doing my macrobiotic consultations for many years, raising my 4 kids. And Dr. Dan Clark said, "You happen to have the best energetic medicine device and the best genius in energetic medicine right in your own backyard." And I said, "Well, tell me." And he said, "Call Bill Nelson. He'd be glad to come up to Boulder and lecture to some friends and doctors." So that was the divine timing that I experienced in getting a hold of Bill. For one thing, I think it's preserved my own health over the years. I'm 60 years young, and I'm in pretty good shape, and I know that I have seen the many family members, children, wives, and ex-wife get much healthier from using the device. And I also see the friends that work with us, our helpers and our staff, etc., become a much more alive person in many areas, spirit, mind, body. I see them happier, healthier, and more abundant, the people around me that have been using the skio device. That gives me great joy. As many of our other practitioners, I'm sure, have shared with you, because of the tremendous repulsion people have towards the allopathic medicine system these days, I have, again, a unique experience of having grown up in Rochester, Minnesota, the home of the Mayo Clinic. And in fact, every day at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the shadow of the Mayo Clinic came over my home. Well, that was a foreshadowing of what I was to do meaning not going into allopathic medicine. So in my college days, I drove a cab to make some extra money for my college education in Minnesota, and I heard so many horror stories from people who had been literally butchered by the allopathic medicine system in Rochester, Minnesota. So I think that was the beginning of it. And again, to looking into the present and the future, I see that same attitude in so many people, young and old. They just want something different. They want something high-tech. They want something now, modern, and here. Which present is the SCIO device, and of course, all the education that they get about their health from participating in the sessions. So I think it's a great movement. As Professor Nelson said yesterday, Victor Hugo's words, you know, there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come, and this is it right now. Well, I have a wonderful story about a woman lawyer who, again, a type A personality, of course, and has worked diligently in Denver with some big heavy-duty law firms. Very excellent lawyer, very intelligent, very smart. Came to me about 3 years ago with breast cancer. And again, did not know what to do, was confused as to go medical or to go alternative. And I said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we let the medical community gauge what's happening here for just a month or two. Do you have a month or two to work with me? She said, yes, I do. She said, I don't have much more time than that. So after the first session, the cancer markers went down so drastically that she couldn't believe it. Neither could the doctors. I said, okay, now would you be willing to do another session? This is about a month apart. And the cancer markers were still down, in fact, even lower. So now people were beginning to notice there's something happening here. The medical community could not argue with it. And after the third session, she was totally cancer-free and decided at that point that possibly stress from the legal profession was causing it. So not only did she attempt a natural approach to cancer cure, but she also realized the importance of lifestyle and stress reduction. So it was a win-win for everyone, and she's still doing fine and coming for her normal checkups. She was very happy, and now she spends her time touring the world, hiking all the wonderful areas God's made on this planet, and again, keeping her cancer markers where they should be. So that's my pride and joy story. I'm thrilled to be part of this family, aside from my own beautiful family. And I've seen here with our 500 practitioners that came to this Congress, the beauty of the soul and the psyche and the spirit and the heart and the people that are here. And as Susan just said, the passion people have for this, but also the idea of really applying themselves, applying their intellect, the gift God gave them, and being willing to come down here and study and take the time out of their families and practices. And the people I'm experiencing here are really intelligent people. Not just smart, but I think they're very wise. Surprisingly enough, as we said in our conference here, we were totally surprised by 17 countries being represented here at the Congress. Now that amazed me, and I thank the Lord for that. And I also thought, my gosh, all the different languages this is being put in. But it's the basic human soul, the basic human heart that this reaches. So I see it literally as a global experience happening. I mean, it is growing like wildfire, but definitely a fire in the heart. And that's where it should start.